Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to another edition of the Teamwork Racing 2020 Championship. Round 25 tonight with the UF1 at Fern Bay Green reversed. Joining me in the commentary box is Jack Eyre. Good evening, Jack.
Hello there, Pete. How are you? Hello to all the viewers. Hope you're well on this fine Tuesday evening. Some good racing coming up.
Definitely some good racing. I'm good. Thanks for asking. I have recovered from the weekend. Our 3-hour Open Endurance Cup endurance race straight after the 24 Hours Le Mans. That was quite an interesting experience. And it seems like some of the drivers here have also recovered because we've got a good turnout once again for the championship. Tonight we've got 12 minutes of qualifying, followed by two 13-lap races, the second of which, as always, is a reverse grid race. And we've got around about 25 drivers on the server, so yeah, it should be a good one, Jack. What are we looking forward to?
Well, it's a bit of a change of pace from what we've been up to over the weekend and the last broadcast that we went live with. Of course, today we're at Fern Bay Green Reversed FE2R. Pretty short track, to be fair, 3.1 kilometres, 1.9 miles, only 9 corners in total. And another reason for the change of pace is the fact that we're in the UF1 or the UF 1000 this week, so the slowest car within the Live for Speed plethora of cars that they have available. So front engine, front wheel drive, massive 1 litre inline 4 engine producing a whopping 55 brake horsepower. That's like groundbreaking figures, but 600 kilograms, it's light. So even though it's quite underpowered and with only a power to weight ratio of 94 brake horsepower per ton, it's not the slowest. It's like you could imagine it as though you were racing around in an old style Mini. So very close racing, as to be expected. We'll see how everybody fares in qualifying, but 32s are the times that we've seen so far in the practice session just beforehand, before qualifying gets underway. Quite low 32s, to be fair, for the top time, so I wonder if with quali trim and some good luck, drivers can get into the 31s around here.
Yeah, well, let's wait and see. I think the most important detail that you missed about this car was that it was designed by Scowen. Yeah, so yeah, let's see how we go. Qualifying should be underway in just a few moments. We're just waiting around for that. And yeah, it should be a good one. It's a very, very short qualifying session, but yeah, it's a very, very short lap, even with the slow UF1 car. Point to note is we have quite strict track limit rules here today. There have been yellow marks painted all over the track to try and dissuade drivers from being too greedy at the chicanes and also out of the chicane that leads onto the home straight. Especially in the top section of the track, people like to hop over the curbs and cut those quite considerably. So some countermeasures have been put in place to dissuade people from doing that. Whether they will, well, that remains to be seen. It's quite fun to send the UF1 over curbs. And yeah, qualifying is about to get underway, so we'll jump to the track, Jack.
Yeah, so who is first out on track at the moment? It looks like TJ for Road Appraisers, the first out of the pits. We're looking at about, well, like I said, 1 minute 32s, at least the fastest that we've seen in practice. Obviously, your outlap's going to be a bit more than that. We'll see how aggressive the drivers tyre warming. Some opting for the open top variant of the UF1. Some opting for the hard top. Absolutely, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I know, absolutely no difference whatsoever in terms of how the car handles, how it feels, how it weighs, everything like that. It's exactly the same, but just looks a bit different, that's all. So some drivers want to get the wind into their hair, under the helmet.
Yeah, there's no aerodynamic differences between having the open top variant because the aerodynamics aren't that advanced in Live for Speed. As we see a bit of contact between some Teamwork Racing drivers there, Jaban and Frank having a bit of a ding-dong. It's only qualifying, boys. Steady on.
You can see how aggressive Jaban is tyre warming there. Michael wants to get through and Rocky's on his way, Frank closely behind, and they'll all be squabbling over track space really because it's, again, such a short lap, 3.1 kilometres and 9 corners, but cars are tiny, so you wouldn't be thinking that they'd be struggling this much. Plenty of time though. 12 minutes of qualifying in total. We've got just under 10.5 minutes to go.
Yeah, it's a fairly average out lap, so the drivers will get plenty of laps. I don't expect to see many people hopping back to the pits because, of course, the UF1 is so kind on its tyres. You just don't need to. You can do the whole qualifying session on one set of tyres, and you're not really going to slow down. You gotta, just get some heat into the tyres and bang in some good laps.
Yeah, it's definitely I think the hardest tyres, of course, to heat on these UF1s are the rear. There's just zero weight on it, to be fair. With the engine in the front being front-wheel drive, the rear tyres are just following what the rest of the car's doing, and apart from the handbrake, you really have no control over how to heat them up. So that's probably why we saw so aggressive tyre warming on people's outlap. Opportunities for drivers to set times though. Such a short lap. Not the longest qualifying session, but drivers should be able to get 3 or 4 attempts at a fast lap in.
Yeah, we're going to start to see a flurry of lap times come in as we've got quite a large pack of cars arriving at the final set of corners. Let's see who sets the provisional pace. It is going to be TJ who will be first across the line, closely followed by the purple and white car of Sidus's Rick Cardle.
Yeah, Rick Cardle was the fastest, as far as I know, in the practice session we had beforehand. Very low, 32.14, I believe, was the time he set. And already you can see he just pipped TJ's time, albeit by 1/10.5, but fastest overall at 32.40, so lower than the practice session. We'll see how close everybody else can get to that. I mean, look, I say 1/10.5, he's actually a full second ahead because TJ's was a 33. I just misread that. So Rick Cardle out in front by 0.8 of a second now. Chris McElroy, nice time, up there in P2 at the moment, 33.05. But Rick Cardle, the only driver on the grid so far on his initial attempt to get into the 32s.
Yeah, we're riding on board with Rick. He's smashing over these curbs. He's following TJ quite closely into the final sector. He's actually backing off to give himself a little bit of room. Of course, he's aware of the no slipstreaming rule during qualifying sessions for the Team Racing Championship, so giving himself a little bit of breathing room. He's got 8 minutes to set as many laps as he wants, and yeah, he'll get about 5 or 6 laps in that time. So here he comes round the final complex of twisty corners before heading to turn number 8, and the last challenge on his radar is this tricky chicane. It's less tricky in this car, of course, because it is quite slow. A lot easier to get wrong in some of the faster cars, and then he heads down to the start-finish line to set his second lap. Obviously he lifted off halfway through the lap, Jack, so this won't be representative, but he starts a quick lap now if you want to guide us through.
I mean, you can do it if you want, Pete. You'll know where the track limits are, you can explain. So through turn 1.
Yeah, on the left there, that's where people will be very tempted to completely jump over the curb. A lot of drivers in some of the other series that use faster cars, for example the TBOs, they always argue that, well, if you're in the air, then you've not technically cut the corner. But yeah, that doesn't really fly with race organisers. So we've got a yellow line painted on there, so if your 2 right tyres are cutting over that onto the grass or in the air over the grass, then it's considered a cut. But this looks like a pretty decent lap from Rick so far as he heads up against the famous Jamaica wall here at Fern Bay and heads once again into the final section of the track.
Yeah, just looking at his split 1 time, 35.60. I mean, the car that he's chasing down after giving a bit of a gap to TJ, about 4 or 5 tenths down at the moment, but Rick Cardle's absolutely flying.
Yeah, look at how close TJ is on the actual lap board though. He's only 0.06 of a second off now, and yeah, it looks like TJ's on a decent lap, but I want to say that Rick Cardle's on a slightly better one. He's definitely closed up, as you say.
Well, Rick Cardle's over a second faster this lap alone through the second split. TJ 1 minute 3.3 and Rick Cardle 1 minute 2.1, so massively faster. So TJ across the line that time, not an improvement, a 34, whereas Ricciardo extends his. Actually, he does extend it by
300ths of a second.
yeah, but then Jaban's ripped it away from him. Look, Jaban the closest to the 31s at the moment, which we again expect to be the pole time.
Yeah, I think that's Tom Salmon and he's following. We're looking out the rear view window of Tom Salmon at Jaban. Jaban probably not enjoying being held up a little bit, but again, it's his job to find the track position. Tom Salmon on a lap doesn't have to yield to Jaban, and Jaban runs wide, so he'll abort that lap and try and probably find some space as he does a little bit of tyre weaving there.
Just trying to shake that rear out, get some heat into that rear right. That's the one that will struggle the most. There's not many corners to the left where all the weight's on the rear right. Of course, the majority of corners here at Fern Bay Green are right-handers, so that the left side of the car will be the one to will be the side that will heat up the easiest.
This looks like sorry, go on.
The curbs aren't huge here, but it could be a concern for the drivers if they attack them so massively throughout the duration of the race, because of course any slight bits of shock damage that you gain will accumulate throughout the race. And
they're quite big curbs. They're quite big curbs, I think.
I mean, compared to some in Liverspeed, like the sausage curbs at Rockingham or Blackwood, you can't drive over those, but you can these. But again, the damage potentially can accumulate throughout the race and potentially hinder a driver.
Yeah, by modern standards, I would still say that these curbs are, well, they're not really curbs, are they? They're kind of hills. To this car, especially.
Oh, someone's just rolled it in front of.
Oh yeah, that's Tom Salmon. That is Tom Salmon, actually, that has rolled it.
So even though these are of course road cars, with Liverspeed you can set the car up in any way you want. There's really no rules. You can adjust all the gear ratios on every car, all the road cars, all the suspension geometry and everything else as Japan runs wide. And the beep of the horn as there's a bit of a collision ahead. You can see the tyre marks on the floor there. But as I was saying, of course you can set the car up in any way you want. And of course you want the stiffest possible suspension that you can get away with. And the curbs around here, paired with the, stiff suspension that is really quite fast, to be fair. Obviously you want a stiff car, can make it very easy for you to roll the car. So we'll see if there are any fatalities during the race.
Hopefully no fatalities. We've got just over 2 minutes remaining. Drivers will be able to get this lap in that they're on and one or two more depending on where they are on the lap. We're watching MRC Michael from this blimp cam. Fern Bay Green is a fantastic track. It's one of my favourites, especially in the slower cars. It's all about marginal gains and a track with essentially 4 chicanes in it. It's great. As Michael runs very wide and goes over that yellow line, he would have lost a ton of time there, so not really affected by the cut there as he heads towards the final chicane to complete another lap.
Yeah, just looking at the tyre graph for Michael, at least the inside of his front right is orange in colour, which would translate to quite high temperatures. Of course, red being the unwanted kind of temperatures, and the blue being as cold as possible. So I'm wondering if this is a specific qualifying setup, we're going to see the same during the race. But he's either running aggressive cambers, using a bit too much lock, or again just going mad on the throttle. Because of course this car is capable of burning rubber, believe it or not. As you can see, Michael just runs slightly wide through the left-hander between 2 and 3. It's actually not a corner there, the left-hander. So we have the second corner, which is the right just after the bridge, and then the little left just before the right-hander again. It's not a corner, it's kind of turn 2B, if you want to call it that.
Road Atlanta corner numbers. TJ is he was showing pace at the beginning of the session. He's currently about 4/10 off Jaban, his teammate's provisional pole time. Let's see if he can improve on this lap. I think he's on a decent one. Heads through the chicanes in the middle of the lap. Does the road appraiser driver, sorry, not Jaban's teammate, my mistake. As we head to turn 8. Nice exit there, not taking too much grass.
There is some debris on his tyres though. Won't hinder him too much, of course. The little kink of turn number 9. Nice and smooth. So again, a split time of a 1:3.07. It is an improvement. So 1:34.01. Actually, it's not an improvement. For some reason, it went. Yeah.
It's the same lap time that he did before. LFS obviously doesn't registers that as an improvement, but it's not. It's the same time. Rick Cardle is then will be the last car to complete a lap. He crossed the line with about 3 or 4 seconds to go. Has to avoid one of the world-class Lions cars there, and yeah, aborts his lap, unfortunately. So Rick Cardle won't be on pole this time around. Jaban is on a lap. He's approaching the final few corners. Let's see if he can. Nope, that's going to be a cut. Although he's still got his foot pinned, so maybe he's going for the old cheeky, I've already got pole, I may as well smash it. Nope, he aborts the lap as well. I've definitely done that before. It's quite fun cutting that corner and sealing the deal in qualifying, but yeah, obviously you get your lap deleted, but it's still fun. Yeah, so TJ is still on a lap. Let's see if he can dethrone Jaban. Takes a much better line through the final corner squat.
I don't think this is a valid lap. I'm not sure if he crossed the line in time, but it is an impressive split number 2 of a 1 minute 2.22. Now, I believe Rick Cardle's pole lap was a 1 minute 2.1. So it's about a tenth slower, but we'll see at the line if this is a valid lap.
Yeah, I profess I'm not sure.
Oh, it is.
It was a valid lap.
It was, but it was exactly the same time that he did before.
I think he improved by 400ths. I think he improved by 400ths. But yeah, ultimately not fast enough to dethrone Jaban, who is our pole sitter for race number 1 of round 25 of the Team Rock Racing 2020 Championship. Thanks for joining us here on Sim Broadcasts. We realise there's been a lot of racing action going on in the sim racing world, so we're really thrilled that you can be with us this evening. Yeah, so Jack, the grid is set for race number 1. Do you want to take us down the order?
Yeah, of course. So, Jaban for Team Rock Racing out ahead for, well, the majority of the qualifying session after beating Rick Cardle's lap with about 8-9 minutes to go, I believe. Nobody really near that, to be fair. About a tenth and a half away is Rick Cardle, who will line up alongside Jaban on the front row in second position. Road appraisers will lock out row number 2 in third and fourth, TJ and Pedro respectively. World Class Lions Pekka Koivunen in P number 5 with a 1:32.72, so just again another couple of tenths backwards. Chris McElroy will line up alongside Pekka Koivunen in 6th place with a 1 minute 32.98. Frank for Team Rock Racing in P number 7. World Class Lions P8 and P9. Jari Katila and Soini. In 10th we've got number 42 Kid, and in 11th place we've got Yes Motorsports Unite. So this is where we're starting to see the 33s, and there are quite a few 33s, but the spread of the grid is so it's just under 3 seconds from 1st to 19th place. But just behind Yes Unite we've got Team Rock Racing's Texas in 12th position, Team Rock Racing Salmon in 13th, World Class Lions Joni Katila in P14. We've got Master Race Cars Michael in 15th position, and then we've got Born to Racers Twin Cam in P number 16. Race Green Autosports Magic in P17. Rocky, of course, for Team Rock Racing in P number 18, followed by Master Race Cars Mega, rounding out our grid in 19th position. So the fastest time, a 1 minute 32.08. The slowest time, a 1:35.05.
Yeah, good spread of times, and yeah, a good small qualifying session there ahead of the ahead of the first race. I'm looking forward to this. Like I said, Fern Green is a great track. Doesn't matter which direction you take it in. Reversed is considered to be more fun. It's a lot more forgiving at the first chicane, certainly. You don't have the enormous pinch point that you do in the standard direction. So, somewhat glad they chose this direction for this round. race number 1 will be coming up very shortly. We'll take a quick break and we'll see you then. Don't go anywhere. Hello and welcome back to round 25 of the Team Up Racing 2020 Championship. We've just finished qualifying. I'm joined tonight by Jack. Jack, do you want to, what are we looking forward to ahead of race number 1 tonight?
Well, obviously, obviously, one of those words would work, but I tried to combine the two just then. So we're looking for some clean racing. We know the cars are very capable of running quite close together. Of course, the slowest car within Live for Speed and basically dependent on zero aerodynamics at all. We should expect to see, a lot of close racing throughout the race. But I think one to look out for especially is turn number 1. Of course, with the enforced track limits that we have through the chicane of turn number 1, it'd be quite a task for the drivers to filter into single file through there, especially at the beginning of race number 1. And of course, race number 2 will be a complete reverse grid, so another thing will be the start of race number 2. But yeah, again, race number 1 is, well, we're gridding now, so we'll be underway in just a few seconds.
We will indeed, as we can hear the cars very eager to get going. They're peeping away on the grid. Yes, we can hear you guys. Here we go then. 4 lights on. And we're green for race number 1. Juban leads the field away from pole position, closely followed by Rick Cardle. And there's TJ already right up the back of Rick Cardle's car as we head into turn number 1. This really, really tight chicane. Side by side behind, we've got Pekka Koivunen, who's forcing his way through past Pedro. And there's TC Racing's Chris McElroy side by side with Team Up Racing Frank as Frank moves up and past. But yeah, Juban holds the lead. Go, take it away, Jack.
Everybody at least clean through turn number 1, but Juban leads from Rick Cardle and Road Appraisers TJ in P number 3. I'd be curious to see if anybody misjudges the temperature of their tyres. Of course, like we said earlier, the UF1's very kind on its tyres. It'll be quite a while for
Rick's
the drivers to get some
look.
temperature in there. But yeah, Rick Cardle alongside your race leader now. He'll be on the outside for the next corner, which is turn number 5. But look at that, just able to trust in his rear tyres to keep adhered to the track, and you can see how slow Juban was through there. Of course, limited in his turning ability with the car on the outside, gave plenty of room, and TJ around the outside and up into P2, so a couple corners gone. Juban was initially leading, drops back down to P3 for now. Pekka Koivunen is right up the back of Juban though, as we watch the cars through turn number 8 for the first time.
Yeah, Pekka Koivunen got very close to the back of Juban, but Juban's managed to sort himself out and has pulled a little bit of a gap. Let's see if in the 13 laps that we've got here for race 1, if he can try and close it down again and try and take over the lead. But Rick seems to have got quite a nice break right now.
So I think a few have tangled at the back. Race Green Redbot has dropped back along with Born to Race Twin, and Mega was stuck in the gravel. Unfortunately, he's out at the back at the moment.
Oh, Pedro and Koivunen side by side, and yeah, Pedro's going to have to yield that place. He absolutely demolished the first chicane there. But yeah, he gives the place back and is now under pressure a little bit from Team Up Racing's Frank.
We've got a little bit of a battle for 10th position as well, maybe turning into 9th as they approach the back of the number 42 car of Kidd. All squabbling for that apex, of course. You want to be in single file. That's the fastest way around any track. But we're too wide just behind Texas and Michael side by side. Michael dropping back into the clutches of the Team Rock Racing driver, who again tries to go around the outside, similar to the move that we saw earlier, but Salmon and a little nudge into the back of Michael there, of course. Didn't want to check up, don't want to scrub any speed off.
Yeah, I saw what he tried to do there. He tried to get a run on the Team Up Racing driver ahead of him as Michael goes very sideways and almost has contact with Yoni Katila there. Very lucky.
Yoni making it through. Has the overlap at the apex, but it's not over for Master Race Cars Michael at the moment. Yoni wider through the turn number 8 for the second time, and obviously on that grass it's going to hinder the straight line ability of that car. Michael again looking towards the outside, but 2 don't go into 1 here, and we know the chicane here at Fern is quite narrow, especially.
Yeah, wasn't quite able to get any sort of move done into the chicane, but as they come across start-finish, Yoni Katila up to P13 now. Rick Cardle takes the fastest lap of the race. He's running around in P number 1. TJ is following him closely behind, and then Juban is still in P3. But we've got a battle behind Jack between Pedro and Frank.
Yeah, Frank looking to the inside, almost has to move on to turn into that left-hander that we'll call turn 2B at the moment, just before the right-hander of turn number 3. But it's all about the exit here, because it's quite a long straight. A couple miles an hour could be, the difference between, 5 or 6 car lengths at the end of the straight. Of course, you can see Pedro, with the assistance of the bit of draft that you do get in really every vehicle. You can see how he's closing up to the back of Frank now. Nice and smooth through turn number 5, and it's all about the brakes on the run up to turn number 6, but they'll be very cautious to run too wide. You can see Pedro dragging his brake slightly before the apex, but just look how he mounted the curb. It threw him out, and the gap to Frank's increased quite a bit. So is it really worth the risk? That's what will be going through his head now. Maybe he can make the move somewhere else on the track, because of course if you don't get the move done, you're going to lose out. And you can see Frank's a couple tenths ahead of where he was earlier.
Absolutely, we've got some interesting goings on in the background now. Ziari Catilla's caught up to the back of Kidd and Yes Motorsports Unite. Unite had a terrible run through the top of the circuit, and now he's under pressure from Kidd as we head down across start finish. Not quite alongside, but Yari's got a good draft. Look.
He has indeed. I wonder how he will attack into turn number 1. Of course, we know the track limits make the track even narrower than it already is, and you can see just a lift a little bit earlier.
The UF1 is so perfectly suited to this track. It's just a beautiful combo to drive, and I'm guessing every single one of these drivers is having a great time right now. Rick Cardle has extended that lead over TJ, but I have to say that Jaban is certainly closing up a little bit to TJ now. And it's good to see Pekka Koivunen so high up on the grid. I'm not sure he's been this high for a while, especially not in race 1. I can't remember the last time I saw Pekka Koivunen this high. Apologies if he has been higher, but
we've got a couple cars close together in the battle for 17th position towards the back of the grid. Of course, B2R's twin and Mega was unfortunately involved in a bit of a collision on lap 1 at turn 7, but he's managed to catch up to the back of the pack now. They're very, very close as we run into turn number 6. A little double chicane there for the 4th time this race. 13 laps here. Might not seem like a lot, of course, with the track distance and the length of the track being so short, but in these little UF 1000 or UF1 cars, we're looking at around about 20 minutes of racing per race. You can see how much faster Mega was through turn number 8, and he's already got a run on Joni Catilla.
Yeah,
if he
Joni
can carry the
Catilla
speed through the last chicane, which he can. Look, he's going to make the move around the outside, and he might potentially have enough speed to get the overlap done before the start finish line. Joni moves to the pits, potentially not enjoying his UF1.
He's got damage there. Yeah,
he's got a little bit of lower control on damage on the front left, but I don't think it's enough to hinder his race. Maybe, but
I don't remember the last time we saw a pit stop in Team Racing. I mean, it's a sprint championship, so Joni clearly just not enjoying the UF1 that much. He's of course our current GT2 Challenge champion, having sealed the deal a couple of weekends ago.
Yeah, brilliant drive at Aston from himself. I'm sure he's happy with the result.
But look how Jaban's closed up. Sorry, what else?
Yeah, I was just going to say, look at another 2 cars that are coming together. Battle for P2 is unfolding around turn number 7. Again, it looks like these cars are miles away from each other because they're going so slowly, but the gap at the last split was 0.3 of a second.
Yeah, Jaban is making inroads. TJ is just dropping off the back of Rick Cardle so much though, and the qualifying pace from Rick Cardle wasn't able to get in pole, but it's coming into its own now in the race as he's extended that gap to well over 2 seconds. TJ quite wide though, it does clatter the curb, and that's just gonna, every time he does that, it's just gonna give Jaban that tiny bit of momentum that he needs to just close the gap even further, and you can't give an inch around here. See, look, again wide, and Jaban just with the tighter line able to gain a couple of tenths through turn number 2 and again through turn number 4 as TJ getting ragged and runs onto the grass. Now Jaban with a little bit of slipstream will be able to close that gap up hopefully. Apologies if you're seeing some interesting number plates on the cars. It appears that the server has had a little bit of number plate problems. TJ currently running around with Michael's number plate.
Yeah, at least on my screen, TJ's number plate just simply says TJ.
That's an interesting one. Anyway, yeah, TJ seemed to get a good exit out of the left-hander on the middle sector. That just hasn't allowed Jaban to catch up as much as he would have liked, so that battle is still neutralised. We've got a couple of cars closing up behind. We're watching Pekka Koivunen, but behind that we've got Frank and Pedro, who are very close together. Can Pedro find that slipstream and get a run on Frank onto the home straight?
So Frank's actually not hanging about. His last lap was a 32.6, and at least this lap he is only about 4 tenths slower than Pedro, who's just come from nowhere really. 42.71 Pedro across the line. This time Frank a bit slower, 3 tenths down, a 33.1.
As they make their way onto the iconic Fern Bay bridges here. And round 2. Oh, Frank goes quite wide, gets the rear out. If you're not careful in the UF1, it really does like to step out. You have to kind of use a little bit of trail braking into corners to keep that rear in check, and that's allowed Pedro to close up ever so slightly, but they're still a little bit apart.
Frank's still able to carry quite a bit of speed out of turn number 2, of course. I think the lines are very different. You can take quite a late apex into turn number 2 and still carry the speed, but you're just a bit further over to the right-hand side to turn into the left-hander, which again we'll call turn 2B before the right-hander of turn number 3. So I think in the long run they're very similar in terms of time. But we look towards the front, and of course we've got another battle unfolding for P number 2 at the moment. This driver's of course only separated by 0.08 of a second at the last split. But again, I mean, it's all about carrying momentum in these cars, especially because they don't have so much power. Now, are they going to take the chicane of, turn number 9? I think Jaban with a little bit more apex speed, potentially a little less curb. His car bounced a little less, so less scrubbing speed off, and you can see he's closing up to the back of TJ, moves over to the left, but again 2 don't go into 1. They're going to have to filter into single file if they're not careful. But Jaban, an incredible move around the outside, and both again stay within track limit. So Jaban now up to P number 2, but Rick Cardle still out in the lead, and by some margin now the gap to second place is 3.67 seconds, and Rick Cardle still comfortably lapping in the mid to low 32s, and Jaban last time around a 32.8, so that gap is only getting bigger. Rick Cardle of course still holds the fastest lap, which he set on lap number 3, which is again a very low 32.14. So currently 3 separate drivers hold the fastest splits for all 3 splits, of course. So yes, Motorsports Unite back in P number 8 has the fastest split 1 of all. Of course, we don't know if when that was set he adhered to the track limit enforcement in the first corner, but at the moment he owns the fastest lap in fastest sector in sector 1. Salmonen for Team Rock Racing, who is currently down in P number 10 just behind Yes Motorsports Unite, is fastest overall in the middle sector, but your race leader fastest again in split number 3, and of course again still holds the fastest lap. He's just driving away from P number 2.
We're currently watching a very patient Teemu Soini for World Class Lions, who is following a damaged Team Up racing car of Rocky 7up. Soini not wanting to put his car up the inside of Rocky, just probably waiting for a situation where it'll be more safe to get past. It looks like Rocky's got picked up some rear right damage, and his rear axle is about 20 centimeters shorter than it should be. Here comes Soini now. He's going to go for the move around the outside.
There was a little bit of a lift before he committed to the overlap there. You can see that's caused him to basically run alongside the Team Rock Racing driver at the moment, and another lift again before we enter the braking zone for the first chicane, and he will filter back behind Rocky for now, but just slightly misjudged that. You can see he mounted the curb, luckily adhered to track limits of course, but Rocky again pulls a bit of a gap because Soini was hindered by the amount of curb he took through turn number 1.
Pedro's closed up to the back of Frank again. I think this group is starting to close up again a little bit. The thing about the Earth one is that it is quite a lot slower than cars we're used to, so gaps might look like they're quite big, but sorry, quite small, but in actuality they are quite big. It is very difficult to gain or lose time, but Pedro really is on the back of Frank now.
And of course, we are closing up to the final couple laps of the race. We are about to start lap 10 of 13, but you can see Pedro had a little look on the exit of the chicane of turn number 9 before we cross the start finish, but the amount of curb he took just it hindered his run down to T1. You can see he's dropped behind Frank, but still staying incredibly close through turn number 1. I mean, they're both catching up to Pekka Koivunen now, so this could be a three-way battle for the step just off the podium, as we've actually got TJ and Jaban side by side for P2 just up ahead now. These two are going to run side by side. There's contact between the two and they both end up collecting each other, unfortunately.
Pekka Koivunen up to P2.
So Jaban was initially
into
the side of TJ.
Oh, Frank's
massive. That's
Frank's
huge
pit
carnage.
manoeuvred his own teammate.
Absolute. So Jaban, massive damage now, and Pedro's still in the grass there over to the one side of the track.
That's a disaster for these two who are running, well, our pole sitter and we're running P2 and 3. That's an absolute disaster, but Pekka Koivunen must be grinning from ear to ear now. He's up to P number 2. That's definitely his highest result in race number 1 so far. Sorry, Jack.
I didn't see the latter of that. I'm still running on board with one of the drivers that was collected. So I think Jaban initially had some contact with TJ, and when he lost it, unfortunately, I think he reverse pit maneuvered him just because of the way that the car reacted to the contact, and they both ended up on the grass at some point. And then I'm not sure. Did you see what happened?
Yeah, so
in the latter part?
Jaban speared across the track and was in a little battle with his teammate Frank, and there was some sort of contact between Frank and Jaban spun across the track and hit, and I think collected the road appraiser driver. I wish we had replays, but yeah, we could. We'll look back at that at the end. We've got to move on between Kid and Salmon, and Kid is looking up the inside of Team Rock Racing Salmon and into the first chicane, and he's through. So Kid rolls it. Kid's rolled it into the first chicane and narrowly avoids Chris McElroy as he comes back across the track. So an absolute disaster there for Kid. It's all going off, and then there's contact again between Jaban, who he would have been seeing yellow flags and just wasn't able to slow down in time as Kid joins the spectators. So the race for Jaban is going from bad to worse. Look at the rear track damage on that UF1 there. He's got huge left and right rear damage on that car.
Yeah, so a bit of a shame for Jaban in race 1. However, with the complete reverse grid, he will be a lot further towards the sharp end of the grid amongst the restart for race number 2, and he'll have less cars to overtake to get into them podium positions next time around. So it's not over for the Team Rock Racing driver, and the higher you get, of course, in race 1, the more work you have to do to achieve a good result in race number 2.
Yeah, I mean, that's a silver lining for him, but there are fewer points available in race 2, of course. Yeah, so 18 cars remain in this race, but it's been action-packed considering that we have quite a small field here today, which is nice. And we're on the penultimate lap already. So great action here from the Team Rock Racing Championship. If you do want to join in, you can. Sign-ups are still open on the Live for Speed forum. We'd love to have you along. There's still about 20 races remaining in the series. 44 race season, and different combos, different cars and tracks every single week. Tuesdays from 7 o'clock UTC, and we're currently watching Pekka Koivunen, who has been a dedicated driver in this this series and is currently enjoying his highest running position in race 1. P2 currently after TJ and Pedro came together.
Yeah, so there's a couple different tyre configurations on the grid at least. So Rick Cardle out in the lead is choosing to run the hybrid tyres on both the front and the rear, whereas Pekka Koivunen and Team Rock Racing's Frank in P2 and 3 are running road normal and hybrids on the rear.
Yeah, hybrids used often used in qualifying and shorter races in the slower and less powerful cars in Live for Speed. Such as the compound that it just gives you a little bit more grip and the tyres don't really overheat on tracks that don't have too many high where corners or fast corners. We've got Chris McElroy, who's it's a little bit of a gap back to Jari Katila, but Chris McElroy is currently enjoying a very good race. He's in P number 7. It's good to see him that high up. Yes Motorsports Unite also in P5. He's had mixed fortune in recent races, so good to see him in the top positions as well. Interesting to note that TJ, after all that drama in the turn number 5, was it, a few laps ago, he's still in P4, so he's gonna be knocking on the door of the podium maybe by the end of this lap. But we are on the final lap. We are running out of corners for him to do so. It looks like Frank's going to enjoy a podium if he keeps it there. But all eyes on the man at the front. Rick Cardle for Sidus has enjoyed a quite quiet race after managing to get past Japan in the early stages. He is now rounding the last couple of corners. Jack, do you want to guide us to the finish?
Yeah, I think through the last couple of sectors, though, if he's still as consistent as he is, we might see the gap rise to about 10 seconds at the line. Last time around, last split, it was 9.7, and he's consistently setting consecutive fast laps. So even though he runs a little wide through and on the exit of turn number 8, doesn't scrub too much speed off the car, but through turn number 9, the little chicane for the final time in race number 1, no one really got close to Rick Cardle for Sidus. He will take the checkered flag for race 1 at round 25 of Team Racing Championship here at Fern Bay Green Reversed. So I think as well he will retain the fastest lap. So brilliant for Sidus' Rick Cardle.
Yeah, Pekka Koivunen, well done to him. P2, highest finish for him in race 1 in the series so far. TRR Frank stayed out of trouble. A couple of weird contacts with people throughout the race. TJ, after that contact with Japan on towards the end of the race, finishes in P4. Yes Motorsport Unite crosses the line P5. Tom Salmon P6, and it's side by side across the line between Michael and I can't quite see who that is. But anyway, that was Magic, Race Green Magic, side by side finish with Michael there. Salmon in P6, TC Racing's Chris McElroy in P7, World Class Lions Jari Katila in P8. Road Appraisers Pedro finishes P9, Team Up Racing's Texas in P10. We saw Michael and Magic finishing side by side there, P11 and 12. Redbot for Race Green in P13. Born to Race's Twin Cam in P14. Then it's Team Up Racing Japan, who started this race in pole position, had some drama with Rick Cardle towards the closing stages, and unfortunately finishes in P15. Rocky 7up finishes P17. Teemu Soini didn't quite find the confidence to make a move on Rocky, even though Rocky was struggling with a damaged car. And finally, across the line, it's Joni Katila, who made a pit stop because he wasn't happy with something on his car. And that rounds out the 18 finishes for race 1 of round 25 of the TRR 2020 Championship.
So Ricardo Forsiders has got his work cut out. We'll be starting at the very back, of course, with the reverse grid for race 2 coming up in a couple of minutes. I'd be curious to see what Jaban can do. He will be starting P4, I believe, for race number 2. Of course, we know he had quite the pace in race number 1, but I wonder what Rick Cardle can do, because we know how important it is to keep it clean and keep your car without damage for really as long as you possibly can. Of course, Jaban picking up some damage after the collision late on in race number 1. Dropped back a couple of positions. Master Race Cars Michael, Redbot, Born to Race's twin, all got past Jaban in the closing stages of the races. And Jaban dropping back a couple seconds from the back of twin there. So we know how important it is to keep your car clean. I'd be curious to see how good Rick Cardle is in race number 2, and if he can dissect the pack and work his way up the order. There's plenty of time, of course. The spread of from P1 to P18 was 1:14. So even though Joni took to the pit lane through in the middle of that race there, still finished on the lead lap of the race. So
yeah, a good race from him. Even though he finishes last, it's impressive to still finish on the lead lap after a pit stop on such a short track. We'll take a short break here and we'll be back for the start of the fully reverse grid race 2 in just a few moments. Do not go anywhere. Hello and welcome back to round 25 of the Teamwork Racing Championship. We've just finished race number 1 and we're going to be getting underway for race number 2 in just a couple of moments. Yeah, Jack, who's likely to be on pole position for race number 2, the reverse grid race?
So, of course, Yanni Cotillo was the last classified, but has since disconnected from the service. So I believe P17, which is his teammate, Soini, will be starting in P number 1 alongside him. Will be Rocky 7 up, of course, for Team Rock Racing. Jaban, who I believe has probably the best chance to win this race, will be the first man on row number 2, and he's got Born to Race's twin for company on row number 2. So, race 2. We are gridding. Green light in just a moment's time. Keep an eye out for turn number 1.
4 lights on, and we are green for race number 2. Soini with a good start there as he guides the field of 18 cars down towards T number 1. He's got Rocky 7 up for company, and there's Jaban, the pole sitter from race number 1. He's following down into turn number 1. Rocky with a big slide, and that's forced Soini through the tyres. So there's going to be tyres on the track in the background, and we've got lots of carnage. That's Michael who's been pushed sideways.
Yeah, Unite and Redbot coming together. TJ involved too, but Cyrus is Ricardo up to P10 already. I've been keeping an eye on him at the back of the grid, but Jaban up into second place now.
Yeah, crazy start. We're used to seeing crazy starts in race 2 in this championship. Rocky being very defensive. Look at this with his teammate pushing Jaban almost onto the grass there. Can Jaban hold it around the outside? They're exchanging horns. I wonder if Rocky's going to let him through. Yes, he does. So Jaban up to P1 already. If he can keep it clean, as he clouts the wall actually, and it looks like Rocky's going to have a go. Why not? Twin cam is all over the back of these guys as well. Yeah, Rocky moves back into P number 1.
Oh, you can see just the huge curb unsettled his car a bit, almost sideways on the exit of the chicane of turn 6 now, but he still leads through turn number 8 now. But look at the run Jaban has into the back of Rocky, pushing him really. Doesn't want to find a way around just yet, wants to get through the final chicane of turn number 9 for lap 1 at least, and will challenge into turn number 1 on lap 2. Here we go. Rocky runs slightly wide, lucky to catch it. That was a tap of the brakes there from Jaban as well. But look at Salmonen for Team Rock Racing. It's going to thread the needle. He might come out on top into turn number 1 because he could be alongside B2R's twin in the braking zone. We'll see how ambitious he is. Of course, we're only on lap 2. This car's very kind on its tyres, and it's hard to generate heat into the UF1's tyres full stop. So, of course, drivers aren't able to push as much as they are when they're all nice and up to temperature. But Rick Cardle, we've got a battle now for P5, I believe. He's side by side with Chris McElroy, and there's contact between the two, and Rick Cardle and Chris McElroy both around. A few cars managed to get through without much hindrance. Pekka Koivunen closing up to the back of Rick Cardle will challenge around the outside for turn number 3. Gets the move done, and World Class Lions Soini as well looking all over the back of Rick Cardle. So Rick Cardle made his way up to I think P7, and it was a little bit of a battle for P number 5, and he finds himself now in 15th position, trying to claw back every position he can. He's up to 13th but hard into the wall, and that's pushed his right rear inwards quite a bit, so the track of that car is slightly adjusted. Luckily it's the least used corner of that car, so to speak. Of course, running a clockwise track, the majority of the load through the corners will be on the rear left.
We saw moments ago that both road appraiser drivers rolled it somehow into the beach area of this track. Pedro's still on his side down at the beach, but yeah, both TJ and Pedro out of this race. Jaban is back up into the lead amidst all that chaos. He didn't have it all his own way. It took him 2 laps to get into this position, and now Twin and Salmonen are side by side into turn number 1. Salmonen holds it for now, but Twin is all over the back bumper.
These two still rubbing.
Yeah, not the best idea.
Salmonen was completely off the throttle there as Twin was trying to push him along before turning into turn number 2. But I think the gap between Rick Cardle at least and Jaban for the race lead is about 9 seconds. So Rick Cardle definitely, I think his chances are over at the moment. I think he can probably P5 is probably where I'd say the limit is for Rick Cardle, who's currently down in 13th position. But I believe if Jaban can keep his car clean and not make any mistakes, I think at the moment this is his race to lose. We're on lap 3 of 13 now, so plenty of time for things to happen. Things will shift up.
Yeah, we're watching. We're on board with Kid, who is side by side with Yes Motorsports Unite, or was a few moments ago. He now drops in behind, but yeah, this mid pack is very close, as we're used to seeing in reverse grid formats.
Yeah, you can see just a couple cars ahead as well. Rocky and Magic are very close. And this is almost going to turn into a bit of a four-way battle for 5th position.
Yeah, Unite with a good run, but doesn't want to be side by side through the chicane.
I was about to say Magic and Unite need to filter into single file if they're going to be somewhat competitive into turn number 1. Of course, you want to carry the maximum amount of momentum in these cars. It's incredibly hard to get them up to speed.
Yeah, Unite then side by side with Magic as we head across start finish. 3 wide, in fact. There's Kid on the outside in the orange UF1 there, the ADAC crash test car. And through turn 1 we go. Kid with a huge cut, but manages to get past Magic. I wonder whether
he did clear the wall on the bridge. If Magic can hold the momentum around the outside, which I think is quite hard to do because, of course, it's quite a tight corner when you think about it. Kid on the curb, though, unsettled the car. You can see the back end wants to give away. But amidst all this, Rick Cardle, down in 12th position, has set the fastest lap of the race, and I believe is the only driver at the moment to get into the 32s at this stage, and by some margin. So Rick Cardle took the fastest lap away from Frank, which was a 33.25. Rick Cardle goes with a 32.48, so 7/10 of a second faster than your race leader at the moment, but 10 cars separate Rick Cardle from the podium at least.
Yeah, there's a whole string of cars funneling their way through the 3rd chicane on this track into the final sector. Good to see plenty of close pack racing. Jaban though has checked out as Kid sends it round the outside of Rocky. He'll probably have to filter back in behind as we head towards the chicane, and that's going to let Magic catch back up. Here they go through that final chicane and onto the home straight once again.
So is this going to turn into 3 wide? Where is Magic going to place his car? He does move to the outside, but a couple of tactical lifts there as we approach the braking point for turn number 1. Wants to maximise his exit as Kid gets it on 2 wheels and takes us into the back of Magic there. Let's MRC's Michael Jack. And Chris McElroy and Rick Cardle through.
Twin spectates from the race. He was in P4 or 5, I think, at the time. Got it all wrong into the chicane and bailed the lap. But yeah, Rick Cardle now up to 8th place. So he's gained 4 places in... Or is it... No, he's gained a couple of places this lap. He was in P12 a couple of moments ago.
Rocky quite slow out of turn number 3, though. Rick Cardle has the run. He's looking towards the inside, wants to kind of help Michael through and potentially attack on the outside, depending on how brave he's feeling. Rocky still has a bit of an overlap. His front wheel is alongside the back of Rick Cardle's car, but just has a little look. Nothing that he can do at the moment from P number 8, but Rick Cardle making quite the progress. Of course, Japan in the meantime is pulling away from the pack. Still not as fast as Rick Cardle is in clean air, at least. Into the 32s now. Jaban is quite comfortably, and while he's at it, sets a purple middle sector, so the gap at the lead 2.3 seconds. It's quite a bit back to Rick Cardle as they still run side by side now.
Yeah, Rick will funnel in behind, and Elmo forced to funnel in behind Rocky as those two are bumping doors behind, and Pekka Koivunen, same thing with Magic. Finished the last race in P2 and is up to P11. Sorry, P10 now as we cross the line to start lap number 6.
Yeah, so the gap from Rick Cardle to the lead is about 10.5 seconds, so it's quite the task for Rick to get past and catch up to the leading pack, but he still wants to carve his way through to 6th place at least. You can see looking all over the back of the Master Race Cars, Michael, through turn number 2. Sets himself up nicely for the right-hander of turn number 3 and wants the best run he can possibly get down it's quite a long straight, obviously.
Straight with 2 corners in it, but yeah, it's pretty straight for these cars.
It's flat out basically for this kink to the right at least, which is turn 4. You do have to adjust for turn 5, but then again it's another run down into the double chicane of turn number 6, and again it's all about carrying speed, and Michael seems to be able to do just that, as yes, Unite sets the fastest middle split of anybody, closing up to the back of Frank.
Sorry, I was on board with Rick Cardle there, as he was really sizing up Magic there. The battle didn't quite take off, so we'll move slightly further back as we have this squabble of what is that, 8 cars? Yep, there's 8 cars here from Magic all the way down to it's a world-class Lions car in the background there. I think that's Jari Katila. We're watching Pekka Koivunen sizing up Rocky.
I think Rick Cardle's just got through on Michael, moves up to 6th position. Meanwhile, all this gaggle of cars at the back of the grid.
Yeah, absolutely super stuff this late in the race. 7 laps, 6 laps gone. Yeah. Ooh, and into the wall goes Pekka Koivunen, and again, and narrowly avoids Red Bot, but his teammate
Jari Katila into the back of Texas there, just unable to slow the car down out of turn number 1.
Yeah, very unlucky for him. Looks like Chris McElroy is going to be sizing up. Oh no, I think Magic's got past Elmo now. Elmo's got a bit of front end damage on that car. Not quite sure how he's managed to pick that up, but anyway. Rocky, who started this race in P2, is down in P10 and is now under pressure from Redbot after all of that squabbling. But yeah, after a good start in this race, Pekka Koivunen drops back down to P12. Yes, Unite now with the fastest lap, and he's all over the back of Tom Salmon and Jack.
He is indeed, but Jabana, I was just about to say, he's on a fast lap. Race best split 1, personal best split 2, and takes the fastest lap away. So Jabana out in the lead in the low 32s now. What can Rick Cardle do? He is 4/100th of a second slower than your race leader, so the gap is increasing.
Unite gets around Tom Salmon, and a beautiful move into turn number 1. Textbook stuff. Now Unite will set his sights on Frank, who is only a second or so up the road in that red and white Team Racing machine.
So how long is it going to take Yes Motorsports Unite to close up to the back of Frank now? We know he has the pace, but again, Japan personal and race best split 1, extending his fastest split number 1. Yes, Unite still holds the fastest split number 3 and remains in 3rd position, but Frank, I think, collected the wall on the exit of turn 5, so the gap to Unite coming down even further.
Chris McElroy side by side, or has managed to make his way back past Race Green's Magic. Magic flashed the hazards there, presumably to apologise for the little bit of bumper bumping. It's still going on in the background. Rocky's dropped way down from the front of the field now. He's in P13 and he's got Jari Katila and Timu Soini for company.
Japan's still out in the front though, absolutely obliterating the fastest lap times of 32.12.
Rick Cardle gets past Kidd.
Mounts the curb quite aggressively, but still is able to keep within track limits and stay in 5th position.
Interesting there, Kidd and Rick were using different gears, and as a result, Rick's managed to get a good exit because he had more, was higher in the rev range. But yeah, Kidd's in the slipstream, so this battle could still be on potentially over the next lap or so. Depends how much use Kidd can get of that slipstream. He's not staying in it. Rick going a little bit defensive, but yeah. Unite's definitely closing up to the back of Frank, and we have this and 4 laps remaining. Sorry, this and 5 laps remaining. We're about to cross the start-finish line to make it 4 laps to go. Our race leader Japan is on the home straight as Unite bounces over the curb. And there's the gap. There's the battle for the final podium position between Unite and Tom Salminen for Team Rock Racing.
And the 3 cars that we have that are quite close together on track are towards the back of the grid in the battle for 13th position. So Team Rock Racing's Rocky 7 Up, Gary Catilla and Soini, both for World Class Lions, are trying to make their way past Rocky as we approach turn number 1. They've been very close and all over each other for the majority of this lap, and you can see Rocky a bit later on the brakes. But John, who's that off in front? Is that Texas? I think Texas has had a bit of an issue as these 3 will catch up and go past. I just saw the aftermath of that, so whether he went a bit deep, took a bit too much curb into T1. We know it's of course possible to roll the car, but Texas of course able to catch it, picking up some damage in the process, and drops down to 15th position from I believe it was 13th he was in, which is now occupied of course by Rocky.
Yeah, now this is a complete carbon copy repeat of what happened in the last race. We've got Teemu Soini behind Rocky, and will Soini decide this time is the time to go for the move? Rocky this time with a somewhat pristine car, so who knows? As I said that, Rocky puts it in the wall. Gets way too much curb and drops down to 15th position.
Yeah, you can see just from the angle that he attacked the curb and the speed he was going, the car wanted to go up onto 2 wheels, and of course, even though you don't want to, you have to steer out of that if you want to keep the car on its wheels.
Frank got all sorts of out of shape into the first chicane there. Unite wasn't much better, but now look at the gap. Look how it's come down.
Yeah, these two definitely trade in time. So Frank last time around, personal best split 1 and 2 in a personal best lap while he's at it. So again, low 32s for Frank and Unite, but Unite last time around race fastest split number 1. So he's definitely wanting that second position from Frank, but the gap came down initially. I don't think Yes Motorsports Unite got the best run out of turn number 3, and the gap is 0.97 of a second. We'll let you know what it is at the next split line, which is just after this double chicane that we're approaching now, which is turn number 6. The gap 1.15 second. Frank was a couple tenths faster than Unite through that middle sector now, but Unite seems to be pretty strong in the final sector of the lap. He still holds the fastest sector time for sector 3, which was set on lap number 4, but of course we're approaching lap 12 now for these guys. The leader about to cross the line to start lap number 12.
Yeah, Japan now on the penultimate lap, and yeah, Nico will be preying on the mistakes of Frank right now to try and make up that position. Frank with a much better first corner this lap than last lap, and Unite is running out of time to make that move. Frank heavy on the brakes into the first right-hander, and that's allowed Unite to catch up again. So contrasting lines and contrasting driving styles being shown here between these two, and yeah, look at Unite, he's closed up once again.
Yeah, someone else who's on a bit of a mission is Rick Cardle for Sidus, number 66, of course, the race winner in race number 1. He's quite a bit back from Team Rock Racing Salmon, and the gap was about 5 seconds, but it's down to just above 4. But I believe, of course, this being the penultimate lap, unless something happens, Rick Cardle is going to remain in P number 5. But fastest last time around, a 32.01, so a very, very impressive lap from Rick Cardle in P5.
Yeah, he'll take home fastest lap honours unless anyone else can beat that in this lap or the final lap.
I'm curious to see how close Japan can get this time around. Fastest overall by anybody, over anybody in split number 1 and a personal best split number 2. He's of course approaching the start finish line now to complete lap 12 and start the very final lap of the race. Can he take the fastest lap? He can't, at 32.35.
Yeah, now United's running out of time, and the gap has opened up on the last lap between himself and the man in front of him, Team Racing's Frank. So yeah, a good drive so far from Frank. Just needs to navigate around this final lap, and this will be one of his best results in the season so far. And it'll be a Team Racing 1-2. We've had two very entertaining races this evening, haven't we, Jack? So
We have indeed, and I'm surprised that race 2 has been as clean as it has. Of course, we've seen a little bit of an incident onto the bridge just out of turn number 1 on the very first lap, but not the carnage towards the end that we saw from race number 1. But again, a cracking drive from Juban. Of course, we thought he was capable of taking the win in race number 2, of course, starting from P3, and he's pulled 5 seconds on Frank in P number 2, and through turn number 9 looks nice and composed. He will, of course, take the checkered flag, though, for race number 2, 13 laps, and he led basically every single one of them. He'll be very proud of that. Team Rock Racing 1-2 Japan across the line, and very close, but not close enough to the fastest lap.
yeah, Team Racing's Frank will take second position. Then it's Yes Motorsports Unite, Tom Salmon and Rick Cardle, who had a bit of an incident in the middle of the race and manages to finish P number 5. There's a bit of a squabble going on further down as Kidd comes across the line in P6. Michael just managed to edge out Elmo, and Magic just managed to edge out his teammate Redbot there, finishing P10. Then it's the world-class Lions trio of Pekka Koivunen, Jari Katila and Teemu Soini from 11th through 13th. Texas crosses the line in P14. Team Up Racing, who started in P number 2, in 15th. TJ, who rolled and rejoined.
He was getting quite
16th.
stuck in. Of course, 2 laps down from the leader because he was on his roof. I believe it was on the outside of turn number 7 in the gravel trap in the third and final sector of the lap. Yeah, not afraid to get stuck in, of course, once rejoining the track. I saw a couple of moves from him towards the back of the grid, still having fun, of course. You can't not have fun in these cars, as slow as they are. This track and combination is just really a match made in heaven. You can have so much fun behind the wheel of such a simple car.
Yeah, 16 finishes in race 2, and it looks like each and every one of them has some battle scars, except Jaban, who takes an emphatic victory from P3. It's a round that could have been for him, though. He would have liked to have been up at the sharp end of race number 1, but unfortunately that contact with TJ meant that his first race ended in disaster and in a wall, or a couple of walls in fact. But yeah, solace in race 2 for Jaban. We'll take this time to remind drivers and anyone competing in any races that we broadcast here on Sim Broadcasts that you can join for mid or post-race interviews on our TeamSpeak server. You can find all the information about that on our website at simbroadcasts.tv, or you can join directly at ts.simbroadcasts.tv. Probably a good time to let you know what's coming up. Next week we have the return of the GTRs to the Team Up Racing Championship. We are driving the FXR, the tin top GTR car, at Kyoto National Reversed. So that's going to be a very interesting race. We've had KY2R on a number of occasions recently. I think we broadcast one of those, a race from there not so long ago. So join us for that, same time, same place, Tuesday from 7 UTC here on Twitch. So yeah, I wonder whether we're going to get a word with any of the drivers here today. Doesn't look like it right now, but we'll hang around for just a few more moments before signing off. Jack, how would you summarise this round?
So we'll start with race one. I think that was a very interesting thing to see, and the fact that the battles were carrying on so late into the race, it was definitely exciting to watch. And I think at least Ricciardo will be happy with the race win and pole position that he took earlier on, and he claims fastest lap in both races, whereas of course he started from the very back of the grid in race number 2, managed to get himself up into 5th position. So I think he'll be definitely happy with his efforts. Of course, just 11 seconds away from Jaban out in the race lead, who will take the checkered flag for race number 2. Race number 2 was a bit quieter than race number 1. We still saw a fair share of drama and door banging and a bit of rubbing from the drivers, but no massive carnage with a couple of laps left, which really threw a spanner in the work when Pekka Koivunen made his way up to 2nd position in race number 1. But no, I think we've had a couple of exciting races, given the UF1 is quite a slow-paced car, but incredibly fun to drive.
Yeah, absolutely. I enjoyed commentating on this round. It was very, very fun to watch indeed. And just in case you think the same, you are welcome to join us for the next round of the Team Racing 2020 Championship next Tuesday at 7 o'clock UTC, round 26 from KY2R, Kyoto Ring National, reversed in the FXO GTR. It will be a good one. We're going to sign off here for tonight. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks, Jack, for joining me. We hope you have a great evening. Good night.
Take care.